Good evening. My name is Mike Wickers, Mayor of Cottonwood Heights. And this is the business meeting for the Cottonwood Heights City Council for January 17th, 2023. I have asked our Administrative and Fiscal Services Director, Scott Jurgis, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to get started. Thank you, Director Jurgis. Thank you. Item 3.00 on our city council are our city council committee reports. We do this once a month where we allow our council to give a report on some of the things that they've been working on in different respects and different departments that they serve. I'm going to begin by asking our District 3 council member, Sean Newell, to give his 3-minute report. Thank you.
Good evening. I serve on a couple of different committees. The two active committees that we have right now are the Arts Council, where we've got a couple of events coming up. We've got an event coming up on the 24th, I believe it is. Let me look here so I'm not telling you something that's not correct. It's the Sweetheart Paint Night, where you can come out and have an easy made date and paint and see how you do. I told my wife it'll be a little competition between us, so I'll add a little fun to it. We've also got an event coming up this weekend. It is the first, I believe it's the first, isn't it? Film festival for Cottonwood Heights. And we've got 2 showings going on Saturday. You can go onto the website on CH City Arts to see that finance schedule. I think the first movie starts at 5 p.m. and then the second one I think starts somewhere around 7. But with the Arts Council, we have a great team of folks that are out there, residents like yourselves, that are providing us with these opportunities to enjoy the arts, from plays to movies like this, and also some other events that include cultural events and so forth. Sometimes you get a chance to come here in our gallery and see some artwork, and a lot of the artwork is done by our local residents. So I asked you to take a look at that website and join us. I'm running out of time, to join us in some of those activities. Also involved with working on areas of safety for us. We have the CERT training coming up for individuals, our residents. We also, I've really been pushing to get some neighborhood watch teams put together, and these are done within your community. We're looking for community members to be leaders in that space, to get other members and other residents and neighbors that are right near you to work together to have some neighborhood watch programs. These are very, very good programs, and it gives us an opportunity to really not just get to know your neighbors, but to get to serve one another. And I'm hoping that we can build upon that as well. We are getting ready to get into our legislative session, and the mayor and our city manager and I are part of our legislative committee. And what we do is we go out and we find out what the issues are that are occurring at the state level and how they impact us as municipalities, and bring that information back to you so that we can share what's actually occurring and share the things that are probably going to impact us all. So I want to thank you for being here this evening. And I did fast on my 3 minutes.
Thank you, Councilmember Newell. Next, we'll hear from our District 1 council member, Doug Peterson.
Thanks, Mayor. It's been a very eventful day. I woke up and started at 7:30. I hate to talk about my timeline, but it's amazing how many things in the city are going on right now. And I see some of you that I spoke to today sitting there comfortably. And I'd love the opportunity to try to solve many of the problems that which we have. it's almost like your home is you have many issues that my wife, I'll say, says, Doug, we need to do this. We've got this and this and this. Within our city, we have a lot of things we as members of this city on the council that we need to take care of. I know that most of you, I heard a lot of calls for both positive and negative on the snow removal and how important that is to be able to get from point A to point B. And when we get snowstorms like we've had this year, it's been very interesting to see who calls you, who's having trouble, and who needs help. And hopefully each one of you have the opportunity to reach out and help your neighbors when in need. But that is a wonderful thing about what we do as council members. Everyone around us, each one of us get calls each day from you, and I appreciate that. I'm grateful to be on the Parks, Trails, and Open Space. That was a lot of what I was dealing with today. We're trying so hard to get the Bonneville Shoreline Trail connected. And it takes a lot of time and energy to try to get those different portions of that trail to go through so that we can use that for our families and friends to be able to go up and have access to our mountains. Some of the things that are very important to us here are both the views and the access to the canyons, which we have, and how important that is. And the Parks, Trails, and Open Space deals with that actively each year. And we're in the legislative session that's going on right now. And a lot of us, we're going to be there tomorrow. And we have lobbyists that try to get the monies that are out there to try to help and benefit our city. And that's a big part of what we do to try to get grants and different things that we can to better improve our quality of life here in Cottonwood Heights. The business board that I'm on, we welcome businesses. That is vital to the growth of our tax base. And we meet and we have ribbon cuttings, and we welcome and we try to assist businesses any way we can as members within the council. We have the blessing of being a city where we have a lot of participation within the city. I'm so grateful for you, and I'm grateful for the work that's been done for we're working very hard on Hillside right now. So I thank those that have helped push that forward, and appreciate the 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Peterson. Next, we'll hear from District 4 Councilmember Ellen Burrell.
Thank you. If you're wondering, I didn't just get a special earring here on my right ear. I've had some very minor surgery, but I'm really delighted to be able to get here today and be with you all. There's a number of things that really impact people who live in District 4. We know that we're just in elevation a little higher, a little closer to the mountains. And so in this particularly snowy, in fact, who's can remember this snowy of a December and January? It's been remarkable. And so I am working with residents and with our Cottonwood Heights Police Department to try to these incredibly impactful mornings that we are experiencing with cut through traffic. This is affecting many of our neighborhoods from Apple Valley in the Canyon Center and Prospector neighborhoods all the way down through into the neighborhood I live in, which is the Golden Hills and top of the world area. So, and of course, we got to always remember this is affecting people who live on the east and west sides of Wasatch Boulevard, because we have 11 intersecting residential streets there. And to be able to get in and out of traffic when it's gridlocked is very challenging. So please don't hesitate to call me if you have innovative ideas. I'm working with a few residents who have some really good ideas, and we'll continue to try to make it better for residents who need to get through in the mornings, whether to work or children or groceries. We also continue to work with the data that we got this past year from the HORIC study to try to address traffic concerns in the Wasatch Boulevard, Fort Union Boulevard area, where that intersection is. We can acknowledge some organizations who have come forward to help with the ski buses. Since UTA reported they had a lack of enough bus operators and they diminished our ski bus routes. We can thank Wasatch Backcountry Alliance, as well as some innovative people within Salt Lake County, including Visit Salt Lake, who are working to enhance our bus services for both locals and people in from out of state to alleviate some of this red snake within our canyon, both going up and down canyon. I continue to serve on the UTA Local Advisory Council, and I'm doing all I can to influence transit. Really, the answer is thinking regionally. We feel it in Cottonwood Heights, but the long-term answer is to get first-class transit for Salt Lake Valley. And I just want to mention one other quick thing. I'm also working with the Wasatch Front Regional Council. They have put in a grant for what's called SS4A, that's Safe Systems for All. This is a federal program, and if they're successful, they'll know by the end of this month. It could mean some serious dollars flowing into our region for, in essence, safer active transportation. And I know that I speak for the city that we would do all we can to qualify for funding in that way to make our collectors and arterials safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Burrell. Last, we'll hear from our District 1 Council Member, Scott Bracken.
That's okay, Mayor. Doug spoke his time and spoke a little extra, actually. So now I better finish on time or I'll be chastised. One of the committees I'm on is a CH2, where we coordinate back and forth with the Cottonwood Heights Rec Center District on things that are going on in the city. They handle a lot of our park maintenance. They're represented on the parks, trails, and open space. And I may have inadvertently helped give an assignment to the PTOS committee, Doug, this last time, because I would like to see some work done on mapping out some urban trails and bypasses and ways like that bicyclists and pedestrians can get through the neighborhoods without necessarily being feel like they're compelled to go to Bengal or Fort Union or Wasatch or Highland Drive, something like that. I don't have much of an update on Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling. We did not have a December board meeting. I'll be going there here in about a week or so for their January meeting. Our youth city council is going along well. Tomorrow is one of our highlights of the year, where we go down to the legislature, spend a day with the legislature, with the mayor and the council, our elected representatives. We've got a mock debate, some other activities at the Capitol, and then we'll be hearing from First Lady Cox and others at the luncheon that they will attend. Our last meeting with the youth council was actually we had Mike Johnson come and give us a presentation on what a general plan was, and they offered a lot of good input on what they felt Cottonwood Heights does well, what they think they could do better, and what they think of what it should look like in the future. And as usual, when you talk planning and zoning or planning with the youth council, they get the vast majority of it really in line with what their parents and the other people in the city think. Anyways, I'm looking forward to tomorrow, although it will be an early day, and it'll be a long day. We'll have a lot of fun with the youth, and I think most of the council is going to be down there, so it's a good chance for them to interact with elected officials at the city and state level.
Thank you, Councilmember Bracken. And I apologize for saying District 1, District 2, our great District 2, rather. So let me just lead off with just a couple of things that I'd like to address. Yesterday was kind of a special day for the city council. Our Councilmember Newell is a member of the NAACP for the Salt Lake Chamber and holds a high position there. We as a council had the opportunity to go downtown to the Little America yesterday and attend the Salt Lake Chamber's event that they threw to honor Martin Luther King. And it was a great event, fun to be there. The most important thing, well, not the most important thing, part of what was great was they also honored one of our police officers. So the Salt Lake Chamber decided to honor one of our own. And so we as a council, NAACP, yeah, sorry, what did I say? Salt Lake Chamber, yeah, Salt Lake Chamber of the NAACP, right? Sorry. Anyway, so it was a really great event, and we were excited and happy to be there and to support not only the city but our police officer. Councilmember Newell mentioned the Legislative Policy Committee. He and I, along with our city manager Tim Tingy, are members of that committee. And I want to just say something really quickly about why that is important and why it should matter. So we go down at least once a week and spend some time with the League of Cities. And what they do is they give us updates about some of the legislation that is being talked about up on the Hill. And there are a lot of good intentions from bills that get submitted up on the Hill. What happens, however, many of these legislators fail to look at how these bills will affect cities. And sometimes these bills affect cities very negatively. And so the League of Cities is there. Their purpose is to lobby on our behalf. We go and as a committee member to make sure that we're educated and understand all of the different bills that are coming down the pike. One of the things that our governor and legislature have stated is there is a concern of mine to minimize the land use and zoning authority of cities. Last year, a law passed that took away a city's right to pass land use and zoning around transit. There are other bills this year that are coming to minimize public hearings. So as a developer, developers are frustrated, and there's good reasons for some of their frustration when they try to go build. Well, they're frustrated that the public hearing process seems to go on too long. And so they're this year trying to propose legislation that would minimize how many public hearings could be held. And so what I wanted to just stress was the importance that we stay as a city involved and educated, and to let you all know how important it is to let your legislators know that we feel the ability for a city to control land use is maybe the most important function that we have to control the type of neighborhoods and amenities that we have in our city. So thank you. Item 4.0 on our agenda is a citizen comment period. This is a time for citizens to address the council concerning whatever matters they desire. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. Please review the public comment procedures on the last page of tonight's agenda. If you haven't already filled out a speaker comment card, please do so and hand it to a staff member who will bring it up. When making citizen comments, we request that you speak into the microphone so that your comments can be recorded, that you give your name, and that you avoid insulting language or comments. The audience should avoid expressions of support or disagreement, such as clapping or hissing, so that all speakers can feel comfortable to express their thoughts. The council is here to listen, but you shouldn't expect to engage in a back and forth. If you raise questions, the staff will respond to you within a few business days to discuss your questions and to provide responses and information. The first comment card that I have for this evening is Jared Van Stavers. I'm going to have you come up and give us your name, Jared. Sorry about that.
Mayor, Council, this is my first time speaking before you. I've lived in Cottonwood Heights for about 6 years. My name's Jared Van Staveren, and I'm in District 3. I've spoken with Sean and Ellen about the—
Jared, is the green light on the microphone?
Yeah.
Okay.
The issue I wanted to address with you today is pretty important to me. It's the matter of the ordinance of short-term rentals. I understand it's been around since about 2005. The city's main concern at the time was due to absent owners who had a home, and then all the chaos that can happen when they rent out their home for a short-term rental. My amendment to the existing ordinance that I have presented to Sean, just a preliminary text version of it. Involves some stipulations that a homeowner must live in a property for a short-term rental, and that the issues of parking or disturbances could be addressed versus just completely not allowing short-term rentals in the city. I would encourage to speak with you, the rest of you, when you have time. I've left a voicemail message for the mayor and you other council members here, Scott and Douglas, about this. And I have some really good ideas I think that might help allow people to earn an extra income in the city in these challenging times with high inflation. And I just would like to discuss it further so that we can come up with something that works for everybody and keep the city resources from being stretched too thin. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared, and we'll be happy to meet with you individually. Next, Randy Whitehead.
I'm not
is
as
that
tall.
possible?
You might be able to hear me a little easier. I'm Randy Whitehead, and I just am overwhelmed by all of you for listening to the residents of the city and the concerns about Hillside Plaza. I've received email after email after email from the residents in that little group, and they are so incredibly appreciative of what you did. I sense that there's a change happening in the city of attitude towards the city council. They're feeling that the city council really is listening and really cares about the residents. And that's a positive change that means a lot to everybody. And so I can't thank you enough for, I was in awe. I thought I witnessed a miracle today when you signed that resolution or those resolutions about the city purchasing Hillside Plaza so they could control the development to make it a public use as well as private use that would be compatible with what the city needs. I also feel that as we look at Wasatch Boulevard and the opportunities that are coming up there, as a city together, we can really turn that corridor into something special. And I'm in awe, and I thank you.
Thank you, Randy. We really appreciate that. Kim Watts.
Well, neighbors, thanks. It's a privilege to be here. And hi, Scott. How are you tonight? My name's Kim Watts, and I'm here to talk about the dangerous slope. My family moved out to this area when I was 5, and we lived in Stephenson Heights. My wife and I built our home here in 1978. It's located at the intersection of Bridgewater Drive and Corey Hill Circle, which is named after my younger brother, Corey. For 44 years, we had to deal with an inadequate entry to Corey Hill Circle. We've had to take our garbage cans and recycles down to Bridgewater Drive every Tuesday for 44 years. We've been here for 44 years. And it's not bad. I don't complain about that until we're in this type of weather. Then it's really dangerous for us to get down and then back up. I've actually seen a couple of snowplows this year have to take 2 or 3 runs to get up into Corey Hill Circle to plow and help us navigate that road during this season. I have to tell you that since we've been here, we've experienced probably more than 100 large trucks try to navigate up Corey Hill Circle to make deliveries. I'm talking about FedEx, UPS, the prime trucks, any kind of a delivery truck gets stuck in that dangerous slope. And when they get stuck in that slope, that leaves us 2 small areas for the residents in that circle to get in or out. So it's It's an access issue. If they get stuck coming back down, then that truck is probably 3/4 of the way across Bridgewater Drive and nobody can get by. And it's averaging 2 to 3 hours for neighbors to help get those truck drivers unstuck. And sometimes we can't do it, which means a truck from the company has to come up into Corey Hill Circle somehow and pull them out of it or pull them out onto Bridgewater Drive. I'm worried about first responders. I'm not sure that a full-size fire truck could get all the way up to the top of Corey Hill Circle. That concerns me. I'm not sure that first responders could get up Corey Hill Circle in the bad weather if we can't get that dangerous slope taken care of. It's a safety issue now for me. I don't mind taking my garbage cans down, but I think if we get the right situation at the right time and we get a vehicle stuck in that dangerous slope, we could lose some lives and endanger some lives. And I'm very concerned about that. We need to please help me get the budget and increase the priority to get that dangerous slope taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for coming. Jordan Clements.
Thank you for letting me have the opportunity.
Jordan, would you mind trying to speak into the microphone? They can't hear you. Yeah. Is the green button light on? Press the middle.
Okay, give me a few extra seconds.
Okay, thank you.
All right. But my concerns, so I have a few specific concerns as to our property and broader concerns as to everyone who lives along the creek. Specific concerns are simple things such as we can't use fertilizer in our backyard of the new home we're constructing. How do we have a lawn for our grandchildren to play on? How do we grow flowers, bushes, trees without being able to use fertilizer? That seems a fairly common sense thing. We planned a vegetable garden. That's going to be more challenging. As I was leaving this evening and explaining to my wife what I was going to present, she said, well, don't we pay taxes to the middle of the creek? And I said, yes, we own the property in the middle of the creek. She said, well, how can they impose this additional burden on property we're paying taxes on? Shouldn't there be compensation? And I said she had a common sense analysis of the problem, but I think there's some even bigger issues for the council to consider. And that is a lot of the people who live along the creek in our new neighborhood have owned homes there for 40 years or more. And the lot values have just skyrocketed in the last couple of years. And when they or their children go to sell the homes, the homes will be of little value. Those lots along the creek are exceptionally valuable. And when the prospective buyer finds out they can't build a home similar to the one we're building right now, because ours was approved 18 months ago, but one that's built after this ordinance is approved won't be anything like the home we're able to build. It's a tremendous devaluation of the lot values. And I think you're going to have some constitutional taking issues for which the city could have significant legal liability. And so I would urge you to consider that. I think this is a ordinance that's trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. I'm not sure why it's being proposed at this time, but I don't think it's necessary. And I would urge at a minimum that you provide actual written notice. I didn't know about this meeting until 3 o'clock this afternoon when I got an email from someone. I think there should be actual written notice to every lot holder, owner along the creek. Thank you very much for listening to me. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Jordan. John Adams.
Hello, good evening. I'm becoming a frequent flyer here. My comment's not really on an issue, but rather a request for a process to more clearly show our city goals and to see the measurements behind those goals. I know on the city website, there's a way to get to lengthy planning documents, but they're cumbersome for the average citizen. And I think it really affects citizens' participation in the planning and envisioning participation. and it doesn't provide any measurement tools to measure the city's progress against the goals. So my reason for the request is twofold. One, to help citizen awareness, to get more participation in the direction of our city, more on the planning end of things. I know we have plenty of participation normally on the back end when there's problems people want solved. And the second reason for the request is there again to gain more visibility as to what those goals are, and some way to see measurement, to measure back to see how the city is doing against those goals. So a quick example of why and how on this request. This is just an example, but in the working session last week, the city council and staff, there was some tension in the room about discussing Wasatch Boulevard. And there were just, there were goals of one side, hey, this is more about road safety, slower roads and non-vehicle issues. And the other side was, no, this is more about vehicle issues and getting people where they want to go with the fewest delays. Both sides had claims that they were, representing the desires of the citizens. And it's hard when you don't have the citizen participation up front. But there was no clear consensus on that goal. And so there was no majority. So somewhere in the planning documents, there should be agreed to goals that include some citizens' feedback that would help the planners make decisions like this if those goals are in place. And just two examples, maybe how we could do this is I'll just cite two examples. There's a large scale economic planning going out in various parts of the world. There's a particular website, I guess I'll just document it, goodlife.leeds.ac.uk does a fantastic job on handling very complex goals, but putting the measurements of those goals in a very easy to read format. Another example you're probably aware of is the United Nations has their 17 sustainability goals. Those are huge goals across the whole UN, but they managed to put those goals really prevalently on a website and provide nice graphics to see how different countries are measuring about across those goals, not even comparing countries, but to see how they do over the years. So I feel like we could use our citizens to help put something like this together with suggestions. Of course, the city would own the content of it, but at the end of the day, hopefully the transparency would help us kind of measure how the city is doing and get more active citizens to help you guys with the planning. So when you are making decisions, you can bat those against the goals and justify how the decisions are made, and maybe make them more quickly.
Thank you, John. Mickey Harris.
Hi, I'm Mickey Harris. And anyway, Randy, thanks for sharing the update with Hillside Plaza. I'm so excited for it because I feel like in my neighborhood, I can be a community builder, and I feel like this will be amazing to get. And I feel like it's what the citizens want and what the community needs. So on that line, we keep progressing, right? And it goes throughout all Cottonwood Heights. John, thanks for sharing. Hell, he's a problem solver. I like this guy. And I would love to see more citizens on committees to help solve these problems that mean a lot to us. Two things that I've just kind of observed being up in my little world of Wasatch Boulevard. And I just want to put it out there with all the council who have to make this decision, even though it's a certain area. We'll be crossing over to Hillside, to Wasatch. It doesn't matter. But what I noticed is walking to the grocery store on Saturday, I thought, oh, I'll just get a good 5 mile, hit Smith's and then go. What I noticed though is our arterials are Danish and Creek and Bengal, where you can feel that car not see you. And it just, that wind just hits your back and you're this close to being taken out. And sometimes the snow's not removed on the sidewalk, so you go here. Anyway, what I found is all these cars were hurrying to get up just to wait in a ski line. And oddly enough, when I got to Wasatch Boulevard, making my big loop, not a problem because the cars were going so slow. They could see me, I could walk, it was pleasant, it wasn't noisy. And I think, Chief Russo, it's hard to police all these streets. But I also think that if we can find funds, like we talked about with legislature, if we can get chicanes and bulbouts and roundabouts, we don't need as much police presence if we can naturally slow down people. And the second thing that I want to mention I don't know if you guys noticed, but when it turns about 47 degrees, you've got skiers and you've got now cyclists putting on their kits, ready to go cycling. And I happen to know in the Wasatch Boulevard plan, which I would love to see revised a little bit, is that we've got this bus lane that I've harped on that is getting shared with cyclists. And it's January, and it's happening in January, where if we do have a bus lane that is also used for a car lane and for a cyclist lane, I just feel like the person getting bumped will be the cyclist, and the person in danger. I've heard danger plenty of times tonight, and I think it's just keeping us safe. So thank you.
Thank you, Mickey. Appreciate that. Matheson Harris.
Good evening. Thanks, everybody, for all your hard work in our city. I appreciate that very much. I also wanted to speak about access on Wasatch Boulevard and just throughout Cottonwood Heights. Mickey and I recently lost our sister-in-law in Colorado Springs. She was riding her bike through a neighborhood, similar road to Wasatch Boulevard, two lanes with a turning lane. She was going along, cars going fast. She had to share the lane with these cars and pulled in front of her and killed her. She was the same age as Mickey, and she actually introduced us when we first married. And now my brother's a widower because just not having this protection. She was trying to do something enjoyable outside. I ride my bike a lot. I commute down to LDS Hospital and out into West Valley to surgery center out there, sometimes 30, 40 miles in a day, and trying to, be one less car on the road. And I feel like it would be, just improve our city if we really put more attention on safety for people who are trying to do the right thing to minimize how many people are on the road. Because as we go out, just in the 11 years I've lived here, the amount of traffic that's increased is so noticeable, and we want to do things to minimize that. I know so many of you ride your bicycles whenever you can, and it makes for such a more pleasant city. We recently were traveling over in Europe, a few different cities, and you get there and you immediately feel so much peace when you're in these cities because everything's slow. Nobody can drive so fast. Cars are not the priority. People get there and then they get out of their car and they walk. It's just so much more enjoyable. And I think this Hillside Plaza could be that. And that's a really exciting thing. I think where Smith's is at, if that was redesigned, that could be it. And if people could actually access that on foot or on bikes, it would make the community more livable. It would make it safer to be in the area. And I just think Cottonwood Heights has an opportunity here to reject this bizarre car-centric society that we've all just, kind of fallen into and accepted. We don't have to do that. We can be different. We can be our own place and make it a more livable place for us. Because I think the majority of people in our community, when they see that type of, thing, if you go downtown, like during the pandemic and you could walk down Main Street, that was like amazing. And I think we just need to remember how that made us feel and how enjoyable it is to be outside in the air, moving through your community, and you'll see people, you'll see your neighbors, you'll talk to your neighbors, make these connections. It's just going to be a much better thing and much safer for everyone. So I thank you again for all your work. I hope when you guys get together to make these kind of decisions that this is foremost in your minds, and I appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Matheson. Appreciate it. David Berry.
My name's David Berry. I live in Cottonwood Heights, District 2. District 2. I sent all of you an email earlier today. I don't know if you received it, but I hope you did. And I hope you had a chance to look it over. I'm speaking to the sleds ordinance, only to the part dealing with riparian, and I am most concerned with the Little Cottonwood Creek area. And I have repeatedly said before this council that there's a big difference between Little Cottonwood Creek and Big Cottonwood Creek. Big Cottonwood Creek has public areas, fewer homes along the creek, if anything, is businesses along the lower end of the creek in Cottonwood Heights. Little Cottonwood Creek, on the other hand, is essentially all residential. And all the lots are built on, there may be 2 or 3 left, one of whom is building on his now. I spoke to you earlier. And then you do have the end there where we have the park on the very west end. But Little Cottonwood Creek is a different animal. And as said before, we own the property from both sides to the middle. And most of us have water shares, so we literally own the water in the creek. And if you are trying to put in regulations that take from our property rights, which is the way we view it, whether you like it or not, and I don't mean that in a mean way, and I'm not saying you're mean people, but clearly it's a taking of our right to do with our property as we think fit. As property owners along the creek, we cherish that creek. We are not trying to destroy it. That's why we live there. We believe as property owners, we know what's best to do in that creek. Now, going to what's been prepared as the sleds and the riparian section of the ordinance, which begins at 19.72-060. A lot of progress has been made with Mike Johnson, and he has worked with us. He's met with us several times, and a lot of progress has been made, but there's still problems. Glaring in the beginning is the definition of a riparian area. And there's this phrase, this vague phrase to include streams, creeks, and other above ground water courses. Is that an irrigation ditch? If so, say so that property owners know, hey, this is affecting me. Property owners don't know what that means. I happen to live on the creek, and there's a ditch on another side of our property. If you extend these prohibitions against what I can do with my property, I end up with grass I can't grow. I have to cut down trees and replace them 3 to 1. 3 to 1. You got this section in there dealing with the caliper of the trees. If we cut down one cottonwood because it's going to fall on the house, and insurance wants us to take them down, you're saying I got to plant 3 trees. Well, maybe I don't want a cottonwood. Cottonwoods grow like an inverted pyramid. But if we put in pine trees, which are more stable, they're growing as a true pyramid, and it's a completely different animal. And yet you say I have to plant 3 trees and I can't fertilize them? Really? You say I can fertilize trees, but only with a professional doing it. But I can't plant and fertilize on my lawn. I mean, that's just not workable. All right. I'd like to address a few more things. So if you're talking about irrigation ditches, please tell us, and don't vote on this tonight until people who have irrigation ditch property, which probably doubles the number of people that's affected, so they know what's going on. There's a section here dealing with the expansion in the grid, expansion or replacement of legal non-conforming structure. Now that seems like an oxymoron. Legal non-conforming structure. I guess it takes a government person to invent those words. But I think what it's referring to is if my house gets partially destroyed and the insurance company is going to rebuild it, then I'm subject to this section. Now, if that destruction is because the creek in a heavy runoff year, which we're in, takes out, undercuts and takes out part of the creek bank and erodes into the creek bank, I'm asking you, if you understand this, is it the new edge of the creek bank that's now 20 feet in, so I can't rebuild my house? Or is it the old one? Because you surely don't tell me that. And I've experienced that. many years ago when we first moved into the house in the floods of '83. And yes, we rebuilt it back out to where the bank was, but this isn't clear that I can do that. If anything, this says I can't. It says I can't do it and I cannot armor, in other words, put up rock walls to protect that bank. Are you kidding me? My house is somewhat destroyed and I can't rebuild it and I can't protect it with rock walls? Really? I think that's not right. I don't think you think it's right. I don't think this section should be voted on at this point in time. You can separate out the riparian area and vote in the rest of it if people are anxious. The riparian area is drafted from scratch. It is not an amendment. It did not exist. It doesn't exist yet. I had a few other things dealing with landscape and stuff. I hope you looked through my stuff. I know we're limited on time. Just one other thing. The top of the bank issue to measure the footage to the house or whatever the structure is. Is that when we bought the house? Because I don't think people understand that the creek is a very dynamic place. When they took out the weirs, it down cut over 6.5, 7 feet. It has expanded the edge of the banks. So when we bought it and where it is now, the banks are in a different place. Those banks will keep eroding down over time. Will it be where it is 10 years from now, or will it be where it is now and I can maintain those banks? There are many issues. I don't think this is ready to be voted on. Many definitional problems. Please don't vote on it yet. There's a lot of work that's been done, but there's more to do. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Just as an aside, we actually discussed this issue extensively in our work session. We are not going to vote on the sleds ordinance update tonight. You know, we as I mentioned, kind of how, you know, so sometimes you see bills with really good intentions and you don't understand how it affects people. So, you know, one of the reasons that we decided not to vote is you know, obviously the creek is important and we want to do, you know, we want to help protect it, but we also want to listen to our residents. And so we are going to put off the vote until we can get this right. So thank you for your comments. So next, Sahil, I'm going to let you come up and give me your last name, Sahil. Did I say that right, Sahil?
You did, Sahil. Yep.
Okay.
I don't think I'll be as long, so I'll be really quick. I just wanted to, excuse me. I just wanted to thank you all for listening to us in regards to Hillside Plaza. I think a lot of the times, a lot of city councils are very eager to listen, but not likely to do. And what you have done with taking our input and giving us any platform that we needed to have separate conversations with any of you or have subgroups with the city manager, that's really helped us feel very included in the process. And I know that you're going through the process of acquiring Hillside Plaza, and I'm hoping that the same collaboration can occur as well. I'm really excited. We had bought our house, my partner and I, in that area about 2 months before we received a notice that there might be some high-rise apartments going up, and we were very concerned. So we understand that we are facing housing issues. I deal with housing at my work every day, but I think that there is a way to make sure that everyone, including residents, can be better off. So thank you for listening, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, Sahil. Appreciate it. We appreciate Randy Whitehead. He deserves a lot of credit too. Let's go to a Mary Ellen Johnson.
Hi, I live in Apple Valley since 1990. I'd like to, again, thank you for listening to us regarding Hillside Plaza. We are so excited, and we're excited we hope to work with you in the future in developing Hillside Plaza. So thank you, thank you, thank you. That's number one. Number two is I live in Apple Valley, and as we all know, the ski traffic this year has really picked up considerably. And I'm out walking early, 7:30 weekends, and I firsthand see that traffic heading through on Winesap. It's kind of scary to see how fast they're going. Is there any way you could get one of those speed signs, you're going this fast in that area? Because I think it would be a really good eye opener to those people how fast they're going. We're anxiously awaiting for the gate to be installed. So far it hasn't. We'll see how that works. And we thank you for the do not block intersection signs. So far it's kind of hit and miss. Sometimes they're blocked, sometimes they're not, but you're trying and we really appreciate that. And last but not least, we hope that you will let us have input on Wasatch Boulevard. We would love to be a part of the planning committee on that, as many residents of Cottonwood Heights were with Fort Union. So we look forward to having some input on that. So thank you again for listening.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Appreciate you coming and talking. Maddie Malini.
Good evening. I wanted to stand and represent Save Not Pave, and many of you on the council have been very welcoming and listening as we've shared some of our concerns, and I appreciate especially you, Mayor Wickers, for taking individual time to meet personally one-on-one with us. We feel heard. I echo the sentiments that we've heard tonight, that just thank you for listening and taking those actionable steps to make that listening into things that we can see. With that being said, I'd like to echo or repeat Randy Whitehead's comment that we have an opportunity to turn Wasatch Boulevard into something special. And I'd also like to mention or remind you of Matheson's comment about the opportunity the city has to do something really great in redevelopment, specifically looking at that area and Smiths and walkability and access. In order to do that, I would just ask that our city take an opportunity or take time to revisit the Wasatch Boulevard master plan that we have, and really ensure that we have actionable benchmarks that focus on safety, that focus on design, and focus on accessibility for all. We're talking about items like John mentioned, the citizen feedback groups, the standards of transparency. So we know when we've met those benchmarks, so we know what the goal is, so that whomever owns the road understands that we have certain purposes and statements behind all the roads that we design, all the pedestrian paths that we design, and all the bicycle paths that we design here in Cottonwood Heights. I would suggest that you might look at Vision Zero action plans, which lay out actionable, measurable strategies, emphasizing these designs and including designs for complete streets. And when I mean complete streets, I'm talking about streets that cyclists can use, buses can use, pedestrians can use, and cars can use, because we all use them together, and we should think about designing collectively together. And I appreciate how you've helped that collective feeling in the community with Hillside, and I look forward to that as we look at this other quadrant. We don't really need slick visual aids for a street. We want items that hold partnering organizations like UDOT accountable for safety, speed, and accessibility. And we want citizen involvement and transparency, not just lip service. So thank you so much for your listening here.
Thank you, Maddie. Appreciate you coming. Cynthia Blair.
I didn't want to speak. I just wanted to make the comments on a piece of paper, but the comments were, thank you so much again for listening to the citizens about Hillside Plaza. I'm one of the people that's been very impacted by the traffic along Fort Union Boulevard, the ski traffic, and those signs, do not block the intersection, and the writing on the road has been helpful, very helpful. Not everyone obeys them, but it's made a huge difference. The ski traffic has been horrendous this year. as everybody knows who lives closer. But I really want to thank the council members for addressing these issues and for listening to us, and just to say hi to all of you again. Thanks.
Thank you, Cynthia. Dan Kovac. I said that.
While Dan is coming to the microphone, I just want to make one quick comment, since we seem to be having so many comments about the signs and the control on Fort Union. You know, Matt Ship, our public director, works director, sitting over here, and our city manager really moved that ahead so that that was all done in time for the key, ski period. So we appreciate the council getting accolades here, but I think we also need to recognize that the city staff advanced that. And so thank you to them.
Hi, I'm Dan Kovac, and I have Layla with me. That's Lela, not like the old Eric Clapton song. And we're training her to be a therapy dog. And so I wanted to talk about two things, but the first is I want to introduce her. And also because I heard that Mr. Russo has seen Layla before and likes her. And some of his canine officers may not be quite therapy ready. They're kind of a different mission, but at some point in time, maybe if we need to do some assistance to you guys, we can do that. She's training for Parkinson's folks, and women's shelters and kids shelters, etc. Lay it down. Down. There you go. There you go. The other thing I want to talk about is, and other people have talked about it, so bottom line up front, safety by design. Okay, used to work for Boeing for 31 years, aviation safety organization, number of other organizations. And, Boeing uses safety by design because it can't just rely on people. So when you're driving in your car, you're in a hurry. Last thing you want is some poor guy or kid who's got to amble across the street slowly, getting in the way of you making a right turn. So you force on them, okay? Because you got a car. They don't have a car. But at some point in time, okay, you were a kid once who had a car come down on that kid. And at some point in time, they're going to take your license away, and you're going to be an old man or woman. And you're going to be staggering across that road when somebody's going to be coming after you. And we've just heard in the news today, or last couple of days, about 2 sets of hit and runs. It's happening all the time. So you can go ahead and try to threaten people. You can try to lock them up afterwards. But at some point in time, you ought to be thinking about safety by design. I'll give you 2 quick examples. Okay, Wasatch Boulevard in Fort Union, it's horrendous. People are speeding like crazy. Why are they speeding so fast? They're just going to go and get into a traffic jam. Either a traffic jam getting up on the canyon, or a traffic jam to get into a gondola parking lot or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's only 2 miles. It doesn't need to be 50 miles an hour. Okay. I used to live in Renton, Washington for a time. They've got a road that's got the same kind of traffic, even more. Grady Way and Rainier Avenue. Somebody can write it down, look it up. Got just as much traffic. You know how they solved the problem of all the problems they had there? They put traffic cams in there. And if you go ahead and you run a red light, or you California stop to a right turn, you got to go to traffic court and maybe pay $80. But you learn. I did. I paid $80. Okay. I learned. Next thing you know, you're not speeding through it anymore. Safety by design. One last comment. Italy. I actually drove in Italy, believe it or not. That was crazy. Italian drivers, Lamborghinis, Maseratis. You know what they got there now? They got speed cameras on their interstates, and it's making a difference. So, we can do these things. Okay. We can do these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And Leela. So next we have Nancy Hardy.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman, women. I'm a broken record because I'm talking about the adopted and special plans again. And I had an idea now. Because some of these plans have really good ideas, and some of them were put together by citizens who spent a lot of time and good thought and good ideas. So I thought maybe, well, if they're not obsolete, what is the plan for the plans? Will they ever be worked on or come to fruition? I'm talking about there's the parks, trails, and open space that's being worked on, and but the bicycle, the Bonneville Shore, I think it is getting worked on. The Fort Union Area Master Plan had some really good ideas to help with speed and make it more bicycle and walkable, and there's just some really good ideas. So I thought maybe there could be a person assigned to each plan that could create a short summary of that plan, because each one online are pages and pages and pages. And just make a quick 1 or 2 page summary that explains it and highlights the information and the goals for that plan, and create a progress report or status update so people can know what's been done to meet that plan. Maybe they could update it every quarter or so, but just to keep the residents in the know on those plans. And when plans are adopted, include an estimated start or completion date, and maybe put them on a tab on the front page of the website for Cottonwood Heights that, people can easily just tap on any plan and see where it stands. I know bicycle lanes are a real popular topic, and there's some good ideas in that plan too. And also, I worked on a Fort Union plan years and years ago, and they said that I-215 was built for speed for people to travel because it's parallel. And Fort Union is supposed to be slow, so bring people to Cottonwood Heights, go shopping, eat, and let people stop instead of just zoom through Fort Union. So there were some good ideas in that plan. So anyway, we don't want to have missed opportunities with all these good plans. So what are the plans for the plans is my question.
Thank you, Nancy. We appreciate you coming. Leslie Kovach.
So, hi, my name is Leslie Kovach. I live in the Prospector Hill neighborhood. I wanted to speak tonight about Wasatch Boulevard and the things that have happened in the last few days. First, I want to personally thank a couple of Cottonwood Heights police officers for blocking cut-through traffic on Prospector Road, both on Sunday and Monday, Martin Luther King Day. Without their presence, my intersection of Prospector and Wasatch, I would not have been able to get out of my neighborhood or leave my neighborhood. I'd like to thank Officer Steve Hartney and Tyler. Unfortunately, I didn't get his last name. Real cute guy. But the police presence slowed down. But without the police presence, many in our neighborhood, I feel bad that many others in our neighborhood don't have the opportunity to have police keeping people out of their neighborhood. I also wanted to thank police for showing up on Wasatch Boulevard by the Canyon Racquet Club condominiums. Currently, as noted, I in my last meeting talked about U-turns in the middle of Wasatch Boulevard. They were there slowing people down. We've had accidents in that street that can be up to 70 miles an hour going through those intersections. I would like to have Wasatch redesigned. I implore Cottonwood Heights Council, our city planner, our development manager to put this as the highest level of attention. We need connectivity in our city. We need to make this road a community road, not a freeway between the canyons. I ask that our council improve the road by slowing down the traffic, adding chicanes, making it so that people cannot make a U-turn in the middle of Wasatch, to control the traffic that is going up and down the streets. Add walking paths, add bike paths on both sides of the road, not on just the east side, as suggested by UDOT. We'd like crosswalks so we can actually connect to our friends at Wasatch, at Hillside Plaza. My final comment is last week I had a member of our community, happened to be Randy Whitehead, was up at my house and I was showing him Wasatch Boulevard. And we also started talking about the e-bikes that my family just purchased. And I said, you know, my hope is, and the reason I bought my e-bike is so I can get on my e-bike and go to Smith's to buy groceries. Randy's comment was, you don't want to do that, you'll die. Not kidding. I hope that you will understand this is not what I want for myself or anybody else to be injured on Wasatch Boulevard. But I do want to have the ability to travel through our community. Please help us redesign Wasatch Boulevard for safety and connectivity through all of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate it. Runar Bowman.
Hello, Mayor, City Council. I was present in a City Council meeting on January 3rd. And in that meeting, there was a vote taken on the nomination of a particular individual for the Planning Commission. And the vote was affirmative, but one of the council members for the second time in a council meeting expressed their disapproval of that nominee, and did a little bit of grandstanding in this second time around, knowing full well that how the vote was going to go. I thought that was a little unnecessary, but that person's right. The reason given for not voting for this individual was diversity, and that there were too many men on the city council. I mean, excuse me, too many men on the planning commission, and that. So in order to rectify that, she was recommending her choice, which was a female, and so she was claiming that this female would push diversity in the council and mean for better outcomes. And so that's the thing I'm concerned about, is that someone's outward appearance does not make for better outcomes. And diversity, if you want diversity of thought, experiences, knowledge, talent. You don't want diversity just by appearance. That's not going to get you where you want to go. So I was a little concerned about that belief. And there was a mention that this city council has a diversity policy where they hire individuals based on their appearance rather than their talent. And an example would be Chief Russo. He's going to hire a police officer. Can he hire the most competent police officer, or does he have to hire somebody that fulfills some kind of arbitrary diversity requirement? I have a very strong concern about that, because that can lead to some very bad outcomes. So I guess one of the questions I have for the council would be, does this council have a policy of diversity requirements when hiring individuals? She also said that this individual also said that she didn't vote for this individual because he was a male. And of course, all male, that implies that all male think alike, and they do not. They all have different backgrounds, beliefs, skills, perspectives. By no means is there some monolithic group of individuals. And to me, that is a very racist thing to believe or to say. And I found that rather appalling. And she also said that okay, I'll leave it at that, but I would appreciate that just maybe a response to my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Runar. And
Mayor, if I may, just simply because Tim usually takes the notes and offers answers. No, I'm not aware of any policy that requires hiring by that, although we certainly are inclusive and we certainly look at that. But let's make sure maybe Tim look. That would surprise me.
we do not have a diversity, we hire, we try to hire the most qualified person for the job. So there's not a requirement in our city to hire based on, like I said, diversity. So
Like that phrasing. Diversity of thought and process and beliefs, not outward.
So thank you, Runar. So the next person is Stephen Olson.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for all you're doing to enhance our experience living in Cottonwood Heights. Just quickly on the sleds issue, I live on Little Cottonwood Creek and have lived there for 32 years. And I would just invite you to take a walk down Cottonwood Creek to look at the kind of stewards that live along the creek and what we've done to preserve the quality of that waterway over the years. When we first moved in 1991, the creek was, we had to sandbag to protect from flooding there. And as was mentioned, that because of erosion, that creek bed is 6 feet deeper than it was then, but it's been preserved because as residents, we've maintained that creek bank with our own funds. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars maintaining that creek bank without government involvement and I think what you'll observe as you walk down the creek bank, as I have done with my grandchildren, because they love to go up and down the creek. And so I've been the entire distance of it. And you'll see that as individuals, as the Constitution allows, we have the right and responsibility to take care of our own lands and been granted that right. And I think we're doing a good job. And I thank you for not voting on this SLED's proposal. Give it some further consideration and come and see what's really there. The second thing is to thank you for opposing the gondola proposal of UDOT. I think if we think Wasatch Boulevard's under stress now, that proposal will make it even worse. So thank you for opposing that UDOT proposal for Little Cottonwood. We use both canyons extensively during the summer and winter, and the gondola is not a solution. The other concern I have is with 20th East northbound at Foothill or at Fort Union. That intersection, the reduction of one lane heading northbound. If you have to travel frequently northbound, there's a real bottleneck. I'm sure everyone's aware of that. I think what was implemented by UDOT or whoever was responsible for that design didn't enhance the flow of traffic in any way. And part of that could be rectified by controlling the timing on those lights. I don't know why northbound during rush hour doesn't receive adequate time, and north or east and west on Fort Union doesn't have the same volume of traffic. So I think there's can be some things done to improve, but taking away that lane to provide a right turn lane that people can't even get into because they're backed up on 20th East needs to be revisited. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate your comments.
Mayor, can I make one comment on as far as the northbound Fort Union intersection? I could pull another report from that, but I did have him pull some last year, I believe, and people who need to wait multiple cycles to get through that intersection is down about 60% since that change was made. The queues are a lot longer, but the timing has been adjusted. But maybe it's time to look at them again and make sure that they're doing okay.
Thank you. The last comment card I have for this evening is for Mark McDonald.
Good evening. I'll be brief as well. I came here to talk also about the riparian area, just there in district, I guess it's number 2. Here's the problem I have with it is we've gotten so detailed, we're telling people, how close they can fertilize to the creek and, what distances have to be laid back and so forth. And I laugh a little bit at it because apparently the people that fertilize on the creek are the only ones doing damage to the water source. I mean, when I pulled in here to come in to the meeting here, there's 2 big snowplow trucks and they were dumping thousands of pounds of salt on our roads. Where does that salt end up going? Salt ended up going down in the riverbed, so. And then I also find it kind of ironic. They're even in, and maybe they've changed some of those, but when they first came out with these restrictions, they said if I had a dead tree in my backyard, I had to call a tree expert to determine that the tree's dead. And then when we take the tree down, or if we take the tree down, we can't use a chainsaw for fear that there might be some oil from the chainsaw or gasoline or something that might get in the creek bed. And so again, we're getting so detailed about how to remove a stupid tree. I had a big cottonwood tree that was laying in the middle of the creek. So what do I tell myself? I thought, well, I'll call Cottonwood Heights, have them come out and get the tree removed, which they did. They came out there, they got the tree removed, quite a large cottonwood tree because I could see it floating down the creek during the runoff, and end up blocking that bridge down there on Highland Drive and causing, who knows, millions of dollars worth of damage. I can see why they want to get it removed. But why do we go to the extent of having to tell people how they have to remove a tree in the backyard? Because those guys that showed up from Cottonwood Heights, what they had to do with that big tree? Get out a chainsaw, cut the tree up and haul it off. They had to cut it up in pieces. So rather than, playing Mickey Mouse with it, get in, get the tree and get it out. We're trying to, as property owners, what I'm scared about is you're starting to infringe on a lot of my property rights. What are you going to have? Am I going to have a problem with you if I plant 4 trees instead of 3, or if the tree is a caliper 2-inch instead of a 3-inch? Ridiculous, silly. We're over managing it. Let's get our common sense hats on. A perfect example is with that oil from that chainsaw. You mean telling these tens of thousands of cars that are driving around our roads all day, all the cars that leak oil and pull into a parking lot? You mean to tell me that the oil from those cars doesn't end up in our water system? My fertilizer is the only fertilizer that's going to make it down the creek, not my neighbors across the street. It's silly. You're opposing. You're making too much. You're getting into too much detail in your how to handle this. My dad always had a funny saying when people from his friends from California would come up, because California has always been a mess now because they don't have any water. Lake Powell's gone. So my favorite saying for my dad was, because of this downstream effect, Utahns flush your toilet. California needs the water.
Mayor, can I just speak real quick on this?
Yeah, thank you, Mark.
I've been over this all day, replying to different individuals that have a lot of concerns about the riparian. A lot of what has been said tonight is not factual. And one of the reasons that we have put off this ordinance vote is to make sure that the truth gets out there. And Mike Johnson, we've talked to him, he's talked to many of you, and I want everyone with a question to go to Mike Johnson and get what it really means. Is that okay, Mike? Is that fair? Because a lot of what I'm hearing is not what I've heard, or I would definitely not vote for what we've heard tonight. But I just want to make sure all of that is clear.
Thank you. Let me just add, we have amazing people that live within our city. And this is an amazing opportunity and for the council to hear people, to first to be invested and to spend your time on a Tuesday night. I know you have better things to do. I don't know if there's a jazz game on or something, but to come in and you know, share with the council how you feel. And you know, the council has, we have a mantra, every single voice is important. And there's passionate people on lots of different sides of issues. It's our job to listen, number one, and then try to make good decisions. But I'm just, you know, after this citizen comment period, I'm grateful. You know, you can turn on the news and watch some of the city councils around and the things that they have to put up with. And we get people that are respectful and have strong opinions and that come and express those opinions. So I just want to say thank you all for coming tonight. And I think it's been a valuable experience for us as a council. And with that, I do have one more comment that from somebody, Mary Ellen Johnson wanted a written comment. She didn't want it read in, but we don't get it given to the council to read on their own. And I do not see any comments online. Tim?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that there were a number of written comments. We've forwarded those to the city council. They're included in the record. But just to make sure you know who they are: Beckett Harris, Brooke Bagley, Chantel Papillon, Dalton, David Klieger, Diane Foster, Gwendolyn Adams, Heather Dance, Jake Nicholson, Jennifer Young, Kim Bloom, Craig Kirk, Michelle Cowan, Sandra Sleeper, Charlene Wells. We had 3 comments, and Susan Rampton and Mark Barrett all submitted public comments that are part of the record, and the council has that.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. With that, I'm going to close the citizen comment period. Item 5 on our agenda this evening is a public hearing specific to the proposed budget amendment for fiscal year 2022-2023. I'm actually going to have our Administrative and Fiscal Services Director, Scott Jurgis, come up and present this discussion for us.
I'm really beginning to wonder if I'm the most hated person that works for the city, because every time I get up to present, everybody leaves. This happens multiple times when I'm doing this after the public comments, so no offense for my part, but but it is kind of funny that happens on quite often. I would like to share my screen here. Sorry, get this set right. Let's see. Start this again because it's not picking up. Okay, there we go. So we're proposing a budget adjustment. We adjust the budget periodically, roughly quarterly or less. We try not to do it too often throughout the year. Try and get most things at the beginning when we're setting the budget, especially things that take new revenue from the city, just so it gets a adequate comparison to other items being requested. But there's a few items that come up through the year that we don't know about when the year starts that we have to do adjustments for, and these fall into that category. They're grouped by fund. So we'll start with the general fund. In the general fund, we're asking for $100,000 transfer to the CDRA fund. And this is to cover various expenses related to the Hillside Plaza purchase, including due diligence costs, legal costs, surveys, and other things that go to that. Again, we may not spend the full $100,000 on that. And if that isn't spent, it could either be transferred back to the general fund, or it could remain in the CDRA fund to cover future costs that may come about. And that would be entirely at the discretion of the council, and we'll go over that. We expect the expenses on this project to complete somewhere near the end of this fiscal year by June, and then we can have that discussion as we're setting the new budget. Item number 2 is a grant from the Utah Division of Museums and Art. And this is a grant that actually goes towards paying an FTE. The expense for that FTE is already in the budget. This is just recognizing the revenue of $4,500 to offset some of that expense. Item number 3 is the sale of 2 police vehicles that were declared surplus in the past couple of months.
We've received $29,500 for them and would now like to utilize those funds to go towards the purchase of another or possibly some other vehicles when combined with other budgetary dollars that already exist in the police department budget. So that's 29,500 of revenue and expense. Cottonwood Heights Police Department Honorary Colonels Association made a contribution of $3,919, and that's to go towards a family Christmas party that the police had during the Christmas timeframe, and that it offsets some expenditures related to that party. Item number 5 is State of Utah DUI overtime reimbursement of $3,130. Cottonwood Heights Recreation Center contribution for the Thanksgiving 5K overtime of $1,950. And then there was a Senator Lee event where the police assisted with overtime to cover some security and things for that event, and that's $900. So the net of this is really the two first items cost the city some money, where there's $100,000 from the CDRA fund. That's a cost offset by a $4,500 revenue that comes back into the city. So a net of $95,000 of city funding, if you will, that's being requested there. In the capital projects fund, we've received a contribution / grant from the Central Utah Water Conservancy District. This is a contribution to Ferguson Park for some landscaping and planting different plants that were planted up there that are water wise and such. And that's $45,545 to go towards finishing that project. In the CDRA fund, there are two items, and one I'm going to verbally let you know that we're probably going to adjust the amount, like I let you know in our work meeting. The Hillside Plaza purchase of $14 million is outlined in the CDRA meeting earlier today. With closing costs, this is projected at $160,000, but we got some information on Friday last week that said it could be upwards a little bit closer to $200,000. So that will probably change to be $200,000 there. There is a $1 million grant coming from the state of Utah towards this. We're not exactly clear on the usage allowances of that grant. So we'll adjust this budget adjustment possibly as we get better clarification on that, to whether we can utilize that either for debt service payments or if we can utilize that for other costs that we may incur with the project. And we'll find that out over the next little bit as Mike Johnson is coordinating a meeting with that office of the state in the meantime. But the net increase would probably be that this 160,000 would be, we budgeted at 200,000, I think. And then item number 2 is various expenses related to the Hillside Plaza. Again, recognizing the transfer in from the general fund as well as the expenditures, so that we can finish up that project here under budget. So those are the 2 items that we have outlined. Again, we might have a little bit of a change in this item number 1 as we get some clarification in terms of what we can utilize those grants for, those grant funds for, and also the closing costs, which will probably be a little bit higher than what we have noted in here. But that's all we have at this time.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate your time in doing that. So with that, I will open the public hearing portion for this proposed budget amendment, and requested to see if there's anybody that wanted to comment on this. Don't see any hands up online, so I'll close the public hearing for the budget amendment for the fiscal year 2022-2023. Next, item 6.0 are 2 standing quarterly reports. We're going to begin. Scott, come on back with our Finance and Administrative Services Director, Scott Jurgis, who will give us our quarterly financial report.
All right. All right. So our quarterly budget update, we focus a lot on our revenues, because our revenues is really the source. We're always going to remain under budget in terms of our expenditures. If we ever run into an issue with that, we'll definitely be bringing that to your attention as soon as possible. But our revenues, we try and keep an eye on them, and we kind of start with our more volatile revenue sources, just so that we can keep you up to date in terms of what we see going on. So our sales taxes, we have collected sales taxes. I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger too. Through the month of October, we have not yet received our November sales taxes. We're sitting for the year at $182,000 higher than 2022. So if you see this kind of yellow orange box, slightly higher than in 2022 at 182,000. We're at the actual number that we're at is 2,884,000 to date. That puts us about 6.7% better than last year's collections. Last year's collections almost mirror our current year's budget. So I would say that we're going to probably exceed our budget. Now we're only 4 months into the year, so that's a little bit premature to be making any real declarations on where we're going to land, but I would say it's probably a safe bet that we'll exceed our budget by a little bit. It's probably not going to be millions, but maybe 100,000 or 200,000 is not out of the realm. Any questions on sales taxes before I move? This is the county option sales tax, and this is a sales tax segment that was voted in by the voters in, I think it was 2020 was the first year. It might have been 2019. Now I'm having short-term memory issues, but I believe it was 2020. And this is to be utilized for transportation, which can also include trails. So not just roads, but roads and trails. And this source of revenue has been coming in each year. Last year, we went from $620,000 to $780,000. We thought that was a little bit of an abnormality. However, we're currently tracking $16,000 ahead of last year. So it looks like it wasn't that much of an abnormality. This tax is distributed a little bit differently than the sales taxes because not all entities throughout the whole state participate in this. And so the distribution dynamics are a little bit different. But uniquely enough, this is 6.5% ahead of last year. So it's very, very close to what we saw in the regular sales tax revenues. And so we're sitting at 256,000 year to date, which again is $16,000 ahead of last year. I would say it's probably a safe bet we'll be close to 800,000 by the time the end of this year comes around. So we'll probably exceed this by about 150,000 and set our budget accordingly for the next year if that trend keeps up. Any questions on that before I move on? This is our municipal energy tax revenues. This is a sales type tax that's applied to power, electricity, and gas sales, natural gas sales throughout the city. It does not apply to gas that you put in your vehicle, but if you have an electric vehicle, then it does apply to that if you charge it at your house. This revenue remains somewhat consistent. We did see a little bit of a bump back in 2021, and that wasn't anything that the city did. This was a result of an increase in the rates that were charged from, I believe it was a gas increase in rates, and that increase in their revenue, since ours is a percentage driven increase, that resulted in a little bit of an increase on us because their base that they charged that tax on got a little bit higher. But you can see that it remains somewhat consistent. We're sitting at this point in time through November, we have the results, $863,000 year to date, about $61,000 ahead of 2022. We had set our budget at $2,200,000. So that looks like it's in the realm of about right. We might be just a teeny bit higher than that at the end of the year. Some of this does too depend on the weather. If it remains very temperate, doesn't get very cold and doesn't get very hot, we tend to use less energy sources, and that can affect this revenue stream a little bit too. And even though we've had a lot of snow this year, it hasn't been super cold. So, that could potentially impact this a little bit. It's not going to be a huge impact, but a little bit. Let's see. Next item is a cable TV franchise tax. And this again is a tax that is charged on all cable TV sources. The revenues, you can see they've been very consistent, all of about $10,000 of net, change in 2020, 2021, and 2022. This year, we're actually 4,000 behind last year. If that were to, continue out, since we've got this amount, we just have received 1/4 of the year. But if, $4,000 behind this, we wouldn't be drastically different than what we saw in 2021 as we move forward. And we had set our budget this year at 300,000. So I think we're going to be just a tad above that 300,000 unless things change drastically. And then lastly, just our general fund expenditure trend. Some of this can be adjusted based on timing. If we have an invoice that comes in late or gets submitted to finance for payment late, it could be delayed a month. And so it's not always, a crystal clear picture. But at this point in time, we've spent just over $10 million, $10,051,000 through December. You can see that December month here is much smaller than December month here. We pay a quarterly payment for our fire service of about $1 million. I believe that payment was in December last year and it's in January this year. That's probably the biggest reason for us being slightly below our expenditures last year, because we're about 566,000 below. We kind of see growth in a general sense each year just because of salary growth and things along those lines that happen as a result of inflationary type increases. But we're not seeing any red flags or alarms in terms of our spending trends. All of our different department managers and everybody are doing a good job at managing their budgets. And we do watch that and try and be on top of anything that we notice that might be weird. We're not seeing anything along those lines for this year. So anyhow, so that's kind of what we're seeing. I don't know if anyone has any questions before I close the presentation.
I think you skipped the Class C roads funds.
Oh, I did.
Did I? Yeah.
I did not open that one. Let me open it. Sorry, I had this thing close out on me and let's see. There we go. Thanks for pointing that out, Mayor. So Class C road funds. So this, we actually collect May through April is considered our year because this particular type of revenue, it's when we receive it that counts in our fiscal state and our finances, not the month that it's actually for. So we have received 6 periods from May through October. We're sitting the year at $746,000. That's $38,000 ahead of 2022. 2022 was a banner year. And again, we don't get a lot of information from the state in terms of why this particular source of revenue changes. It is based on the gas tax that's on each gallon of fuel that's sold. So, and then it's allocated back out. Based on that, I would say that what we're seeing here, I would say that we're basically seeing people go from in especially 2021, when it was a bit of an anemic year because of COVID and not a lot of people were traveling. We're seeing people getting back out and doing some of that traveling, and maybe they're not traveling abroad, they're traveling more locally, but it's also, the big delivery trucks and other things like that. So maybe, the deliveries that we see, from online sales is driving a little bit of that. It's hard to put your finger on everything with that, but you can kind of lead a little bit into that. It doesn't have to do with the actual per gallon price, because it's a cents per gallon tax that's added on for that as it comes into us. We set the budget at $1,250,000. It wouldn't surprise me to see this potentially come close to $1.5 million in terms of our overall revenues that we receive on the year if it keeps up at this rate. So we'll watch it and see if anything happens when we get a couple more months in our radar.
Great.
Okay.
I wonder if because I know they changed the law in 19 or 20 to include percentages that goes into effect in January. Yeah. Put it down.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure what the total gas tax is taking.
Yeah. And well, I know portions come to the state, portions come to the county, and portions come to the cities. Because they're state roads, county roads and city roads. And so it's kind of a hierarchy.
It is
of
based
how it
per
goes.
gallon.
But it's a per gallon percent, cents per gallon overall. But I don't know where, how many dollars of, or how many cents per, each of those levels get to everybody. So.
Well, thank you, Scott. We, this report is really important and some of the trends that we're seeing are positive, especially in an environment where high inflation and the economy perhaps slowing. But so far things look pretty good. So thank you. Okay, our next report, we have our assistant fire chief from United Fire Authority on Zoom with us, and Riley Pilgrim, and he's going to do his report over there. So we see you, Riley, and go ahead.
Right.
Do your deal.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me all right. My service seems to be cutting in and out, but apologize I can't be there in person. I'm heading down to St. George for a conference this week, but always looking forward to this opportunity. So I'll share my screen with you real quick. Hopefully you can all see that all right. So I went through this quarter's items, and it feels like we're kind of on track with where things have been each quarter within Cottonwood Heights, which is pretty unique, but pretty interesting as well, as far as our numbers don't fluctuate a whole lot. We had about 540 incidents, so just shy of that. We're still working on this data right here, our emergent versus non-emergent calls. Again, this is when dispatch sends us on what they call a priority one, which is kind of a licensed siren, kind of a life emergency. So a full arrest, a heart attack, a breathing problem, or a fire. And so it does seem like the majority of our calls may not be that classified as emergent, but our captains again have the discretion to increase that as they see fit once they get the details. But right here, again, over the last few quarters, this seems to be pretty average for Cottonwood Heights. When I looked at the 4-year comparison, just from 2019 to 2022, again, we're not seeing too big of a spike anywhere as far as calls go. So pretty consistent across the board for this last quarter of 2022. As far as calls go, we had 2 structure fires, which again are just classified as that. I didn't have any details of anything significant that happened with those fires, but a pretty small amount. I do want to make a note. I saw in the report that was sent out Friday, for some reason the news labeled one of the fires that we just had in Cottonwood Heights, but it was on 4500 South and Wasatch Boulevard. So that's kind of in between Mill Creek and Holiday. So, but when I was notified, they said it was in Cottonwood Heights, but when we looked at the address, it was quite a bit further north from the city. So, but in this last quarter, nothing too substantial as far as our fire activity goes. We did have some pretty good stops on some fires that stayed small. I talked to one of the captains. We did experience one lithium battery fire, which is becoming more common in the fire service across the country, especially with the reaction they get with water. Now that we have a lot more of the electronic vehicles, cars powered by batteries, we're going to potentially see more of this, but they were able to extinguish the fire before it became too big. But I do think that's going to be a trend that we start seeing more of. As far as EMS calls, kind of standard. I need to get more details on what responder request means. I believe that's just kind of a public assist where we go and just help somebody with whatever they have. It might not be an injury fall, but just a fall where they need help getting up and back into bed or back into wherever they need to be. But falls tend to be, again, one of our most common calls that we go on across the board. We're actually, item of note, we're working with Salt Lake County Health to begin a campaign on educating our kind of the older populations, older demographics within the county of some of the resources that are available. And one of the things that we've learned that the county offers that we really want to help promote is a fall prevention class. And they have people who can come out and look in people's living areas and make sure things are safe and help them understand maybe some of the changes they can make to prevent this from happening. So as we see these numbers increase, we're trying to find some innovative ways that we can engage with our community in a non-emergent fashion and make sure they're getting some different assistance than us just coming to their home and helping them out, but something that's more long-term that will be beneficial to them. And then just other calls, we do have the public assistant calls here broken down. This time of year, detector malfunctions tend to be a little more common, just with people with indoor heating, batteries, right? Just after daylight savings ends, we try to promote changing batteries. So it's not totally uncommon to see this many detector malfunctions, but it is a pretty high number. So another thing that I keep a close eye on is our unit responses within Cottonwood Heights. Again, we're covering the majority of the calls in Cottonwood Heights with our resources. So Station 110 and Station 116 combined are about 90% of the responses. And we have a little bit of help from Midvale, Station 126, just again, just on West Fort Union, so about 700 east there. And then others would be Sandy or Holiday or somebody else coming in. That makes a pretty small percentage, only 16 unit responses in a quarter is a pretty small number. Then with the ambulances, again, just to reiterate, those are classified or looked at as a regional service. We do have the ambulance at Station 110. We do tend to see an increase in its utilization of these three, especially when ski season hits. We try to kind of preempt that with the peak load ambulance that I shared, I believe in the last meeting, where they staff on our busy days when the ski resorts tend to have more business, but they typically generate more than one call, sometimes even at a time. And so it does put a little bit more demand on our regional ambulances, but we try to manage that as best as possible by keeping that peak load in service. Again, we talked about emergent times. So 90th percentile. So, only 10% of our calls are going beyond that 855 mark. Half our calls are landing in that 523. So I feel like we're doing some great things here in Cottonwood Heights with our responses. I'm actually I'm anticipating the change that we can make with our turnout times and things we talked about last time and seeing these numbers improve. And even a slight improvement if we can knock off, anywhere from 10 to 25 or 30 seconds over time is going to be a huge win for us. So we'll keep working on this and we'll watch these numbers. This one's important that I want to keep track of for the next couple months to see if, as we start implementing these changes and encouraging our crews to be a little bit more timely in their response and working with dispatch, that we see these numbers continue to improve. But these are great as they are right now for Cottonwood Heights and for some of the busyness, right? When it comes to travel times and response time, these are pretty good numbers. And then just the cluster map that shows kind of our predominant calls. This does show 591 where the total was 537. I'm going to do a little follow-up just to make sure there's no discrepancies there. Sometimes this map populates a few extra calls. But as you can see, just our commercial areas and areas where we have more population, apartment complexes or the higher density housing tend to generate more calls for us, just like with PD. We tend to send, more units there. And then a heat map that also kind of depicts the same thing. In this cluster here, just off of 23 and 7200. Again, there is one care center in that area, and I can find out. I might look into that to see exactly why that is a little bit more than usual, but this over here on the western end of the city is pretty standard. But this I'm a little curious about, so I'll do a little more research and see what that was. And really that's it, kind of quick, to the point. Is there any questions or anything about the report that you guys are curious about?
Doesn't look like it, Chiefs, but thank you. We appreciate you taking your time, especially while you're traveling to stop.
Yeah, it looks like it's kind of rainy out there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's snowing.
I don't
It's
know what the price of gas is though.
Yeah, it's been about 1.5 inches since I've been sitting here, so it's coming down pretty good. So
where you at it exactly, Riley? Where you at?
I parked in Fillmore just to make sure I had cell service to get this piece done, and Yeah, it's been snowing pretty good since, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, do us a favor and drive safe, please.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
you. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, item 7.0. So we have 3 legislative items to consider as a council tonight. We're going to have consideration of ordinance 392. Sorry, we are actually not going to consider that today. We are going to begin with 7.2, consideration of resolution 2023-05, consenting to an appointment to the Cottonwood Heights Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee. And I'll just have our city manager, Tim Dinky, give us a brief description of this potential appointee.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I had the opportunity to sit down with Mike Johnson and Zachary Geiger, and we interviewed him, talked about his desire to serve on this committee. He's really excited about it. He's been involved in some of the meetings already without even being on the committee. So we feel like he'll bring great passion and some great background from other committees he's served on in other communities. I'm recommending approval of this appointment.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions or comments before proceeding? I'll now entertain a motion to approve consideration of resolution 2023-05.
I'll make the motion to approve resolution number 2023-05.
And I'll second that, Mayor.
We have a motion to approve from Councilmember Newell and a second from Councilmember Peterson. Final questions, comments? I'll now call for the vote. Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Next is a consideration of resolution 2023-06, approving an agreement with Brown's Amusements, Inc. for the Butlerville Days Carnival. We discussed this item earlier in our work session. Are there any other questions or comments from the council?
No, I appreciate Ann Etchell's work on getting this taken care of and getting all of these things before us so we can have all the contracts signed that we need to. And I would move that we approve resolution 2023.
I second that, Mayor.
A motion to approve from Councilmember Bracken and a second from Councilmember Peterson. Final questions, comments? I will now call for the vote. Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Our last legislative item for this evening is consideration of resolution 2023-07, approving the form of an interlocal sales tax pledge agreement and the issuance of the city obligation created thereunder in the maximum aggregate principal amount of 14.5/14.9 million and related matters. I'm going to have our city manager, Tim Tingy, talk about this for just a moment.
Yeah, so we discussed this in the Community Development Renewal Agency meeting. We have the Hillside Plaza property under contract. That does not include the Walgreens property. It's under contract with the redevelopment agency. As I just mentioned, it's in their purview under state code to facilitate redevelopment of a site like that. And so they have it under contract. We also, there was a bond parameters resolution that was approved by the Community Development Renewal Agency. This item connects that because it is the interlocal that will allow for a sales tax funding pledge to help pay for the bonds to purchase the property. So we've discussed it in these public meetings. I feel like it's in the best interest of the city to pursue this at this time and to facilitate redevelopment and hopefully pursue a public and private purpose on the site, which will be talked in the future as we move forward. We're still doing due diligence on the property as well and working through that, but we're recommending approval of this interlocal agreement to pledge these sales tax funds for the bond contribution.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. Questions or comments from the council?
My only comment would be with the motion that we make sure that the maximum aggregate principal matches the other. I put up in the other resolution.
Parameters
which
resolution,
would
yeah.
be a 14.9. Or I can make that motion if no one else wants to.
I'll make that motion. Council Bracken.
Right, then I will second it.
A motion to approve from Councilmember Peterson and a second from Councilmember Bracken. Final questions, comments? I'll now call for the vote. Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Okay, we do not have the consent calendar to approve from our previous meetings tonight. We'll do that in our next meeting. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn before it gets to be 9 o'clock.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.